after sort of Waterboy's World Party,
yes,
where did you go next?
I was just doing freelance stuff around London, playing on pop albums. I did Swing Out Sister, I did Tracy Ullman and things like that, and did some Tom Jones even. And I had a phone call from somebody. It all used to come through phone calls from management companies, and I had a phone call. This guy Julian Cope's doing a record. Would you be interested in playing on it? So I said, yeah, I'd love to do that. And he was in the Liverpool explosion of the early 80s, late 70s, early 80s. Teardrop Explodes was his band, and then they came along. They were almost the same band as Echo and the Bunnymen. They had a lot of the same members who would play on each other's records. And so I loved that music. I used to love Echo and the Bunnymen. And so I did. And so I was, when I realized that was Julian Cope, I said, yes, I'd really like to play on that. So I went up to this studio in Cambridge, and it was all very strange. Julian was in his sort of LSD phase, I think, and it was all a bit strange. He was like crawling around on the studio floor while you were doing the drum tracks and things. But I'm not a drug taker, but it didn't freak me out. I just thought, oh, this guy's a bit odd. I didn't really realize what was going on, actually. So that album came out, and it came out massive critical acclaim. All the critics, NME and everything, loved it. It was a very weird album, but it didn't sell anything.
Which one was it?
Fried, it was called. He's on the cover with a turtle shell on his back, playing with a toy car. So it's funny. And
right, yeah.
So after that, I just went back to doing studio work. I really saw my career, Julian, I really saw my career as being a studio drummer. I wasn't that interested in being in a band, playing the same songs for years on end. And so I just went back to doing studio drumming. And then a year or so later, Julian Cope's management phoned again and said, you know, we're going to do another album, and Julian wants to put a band together, and he wants to get some really good musicians this time and put a firm band together. And so I said, yeah, I'll do that. And so he put me together with the guy called James Eller, a bass player who had been doing Clive Langer and the Boxes, people like that, sort of Nick Lowe type stuff. And later would become the bass player with the on Mind Bomb and all those albums.
Yeah, yeah.
And so we became the set band. And so Julian had a bunch of new songs, but they all decided they weren't going to record them. They were going to tour them. And so we went around a lot of places. We went to America a few times. We went to Japan. We played around the UK, playing some of his previous hits, Teardrop Explodes and stuff like that, and playing these new songs. And so when we came to do the album, which was the St. Julian album, we had played these songs a lot, and we'd refined them a lot and taken bits out and added bits. And so we went into the studio with a producer called Ed Stasium, who'd done the Ramones and a band called Living Colour, like a sort of heavy metal band called Living Colour. And he was just an amazing producer. He got the most amazing drum sound. He got all these valve gear out, and I'd done a lot of studio work by then. And he set up all the mics, and I was playing, and he said, come and have a listen. So I went in the control room and he played me the drum sound. I was just blown away. I just thought it was an amazing rock drum sound. And so we did a few tracks with him. And then they decided that they wanted to have a slightly different approach on some of the other songs. And so they brought in a guy called Warren Livesey, who had done Deacon Blue and people like that. And he later went on to become the producer of the on Mind Bomb and those albums. Really nice guy, got on really well with him. And he was a bit more techie. He was a bit more working with computers and drum machines and things. But we ended up playing on the record, and the record came out, and it was a big hit. It was one of Julian's biggest hits. But at that point, because I know you're a fan of the later stuff, was it Jehovah Kill or Peggy Suicide or whatever?
I like, all of those. But, you know, I did look up, because I know we've spoken a couple of times, I did look up Fried, I think a few days ago. I looked at the track listing. I went like, Reynard the Fox, love that. Sunspots, love that. And is it Oh Elegant Chaos? Is that on there?
Yeah, that's right. I think so. Yeah.
So I think I think I liked. I've played. This is kind of unusual for me. I've played the songs, but very rarely the whole album. So I need to go back and listen to that because I reckon that'll stand up pretty well now. Even though, I do like the weirder stuff.
Yes,
but I think after he did 20 Mothers, it's 20 Mothers and Interpreter, and after Interpreter, well, whichever those two came last, I sort of lost interest really as the 2000s, rolled around.
Yeah, well, the St. Julian album was a departure in that he got a good record deal with Island Records before the album was made, and his management said, you could be really big. And he wrote very commercial songs, but then he would record them in a very uncommercial way. And he was really influenced by krautrock and all that kind of stuff. And so he would use a lot of cheap Casio keyboards and all kinds of weird stuff. And we had a very young guitarist who was a bit left field, Donald Skinner. But they wanted to make this commercial rock album. And so James and I were like the commercial rock rhythm section. And we made this album. It was very successful in a kind of indie rock way. It was very successful. It wasn't as big as Coldplay or U2 or anything like that. But we had a bit of a hit with the single World Shut Your Mouth. And we did Top of the Pops and all that kind of stuff, and did a bunch of videos and toured America. And it was a success. But I think for Julian, it was a regrettable success because I think he found himself doing stuff that he didn't want to do, and he didn't want to do breakfast television and kids daytime TV and all that. He wanted to be krautrock and be sort of hanging off a mic stand, bleeding from the chest where he'd gashed his chest open with a broken bottle kind of thing, which he famously did at a show once. And so that's what he wanted to do. And so I think as a reaction to St. Julian, he said, I'm not going to do this again. And that's when he started making those albums that you really like, when he just went off on his own direction. But anyway, towards the end of my time with Julian Cope, we were on tour in America, and I got a message got to me on a hotel reception. Somebody handed a message to me or something. Can you call Paul McCartney's office? So I thought, this is a bit out of the blue and weird. So I eventually found a way, because we had no money in Julian Cope and we were staying in motels. I eventually found a way to call Paul McCartney's office. And they said, during the summer, Paul wants to hang out with some younger musicians. He's been playing with a lot of established American session musicians, and he just wants to freshen up his attitude, and he wants to find some younger musicians. So he's having these sort of jam sessions in a warehouse in East London every week or two. And we've heard about you, and would you like to come down? So eventually, after the Julian Cope tour and everything, and I was back in London, I got invited to one of these sessions. So I took my drums down to this warehouse, set them up, and there was a bunch of other people there I'd never met before. I didn't know, other musicians, keyboard players and stuff like that. And we were all standing around talking for about half an hour. Then the door burst open, and in walked Paul McCartney and Linda and Paul's manager and a couple of other entourage people. And at that point, your mind sort of goes blank. And I finally woke up about 2.5 hours later, realizing that the previous 2.5 hours, I hadn't known what I was doing.